It is time for a scientific understanding of humans. Now, in another part of my video, I have described what is science and is not science. And I've also said that human affairs may not be science because they cannot be measured accurately. Now, I call this model, which I'm going to present in this section, science because it does have accuracy from the its discussion on evolution. However, if you think that's not enough to call this science, you can say a rational model for humans, a wise model for humans, an accurate model for humans. Okay. So we are made of atoms. Our brains are therefore also made of atoms. And we don't have to fear this idea that there is nothing non-physical about us, that we are just merely molecules. Okay. Someone may say, well, if you're just molecules, what is the purpose, meaning, use of it all? One does not need to think that way. There is nothing which makes that kind of thinking true, because just like whoever's saying that is choosing that as their version of reality, whoever is questioning the meaning of life, we can also have our version of reality that includes that what we need in that our version of reality can be just that the causality relationships are accurate and the results that we expect in our view of what is reality should actually happen. Given that, we are free to define a reality which has meaning, morality, best life, duty, purpose. So we don't have to define a reality in which we are purposeless, our lives have no meaning. We can actually define a reality which is optimal for us. Of course, when so fine, I say that we have this power to define our reality, but of course there are some constraints, right? And one of the constraints is that whatever outcomes and causality relationships we have in our reality, they should be accurate. We should not imagine that I'm going to jump out of the window and I'm going to fly. That's not going to happen. You can choose to define your reality where you jump out of the window and you'll fly, but that reality lacks accuracy. It lacks these causal relationships that the act of jumping out of the window will not result in you falling hard on the ground and being injured or worse. Okay, so we cannot actually discover causal relationships based on the fact that we are material. So there is mystery in our lives. And we can infer the causal relationships from our observations plus our understanding of evolution. We have to read books to understand our lives. We have to also live our lives to understand our lives. We cannot actually decide how to get our best life by an analysis of the brain at the molecular level. So the best description of the causal relationships will come from someone who is best able to combine the observations from real life with an understanding of evolution. That is someone who's best at perceiving the world and analyzing evolution. Okay, so okay, so when we desire something, an action or a material good, or when we do something, it is the physical brain that is producing the directive that we do that thing. We think of our brains and the rest of the bodies. We may think that we are losing something special that inanimate objects like chairs and tables, we are just like chairs and tables. But however, not true. We possess brains capable of emotions, analysis, and directed actions, and that makes us different from inanimate objects. Now, the brain is an organ. Okay, like other organs in our body, the brain has also been shaped by evolution, and it has been given objectives and is capable of analysis. So, if you believe in the molecular basis of life, if you don't believe in that, then you believe that there's something supernatural which impacts our lives. If you believe in the probability theory, and if you believe in the absence of supernatural intervention in our thoughts and actions, by supernatural I mean something which is beyond the material, intervention in our thoughts and actions, then it follows that evolution has molded our brains. Now, we are, of course, in our view of reality, we are free to have the supernatural in our reality. However, as long as the causal relationships that we have in our reality are accurate, it's okay. You can have the supernatural. There's no contradiction. Nobody can tell you that you can't have the supernatural. However, if you have causal relationships which are not accurate, for example, you believe that something supernatural is going to get you out of a situation that you don't want to be in, then your causality relationship is not accurate, and you're going to be disappointed. Okay, so evolution changes our genes to make them more suited to the environment which then existed. And I'll use the word paleo for the average environment that we have evolved in. Not necessarily the Paleolithic period, which is supposed to be, something which started about 3.3 million years ago and ended about 12,000 years before. So I'm not saying paleo strictly as that period. What I'm just saying is that I use this word because it's convenient to use this word. So I use the word paleo to describe the average environment in which we evolved. Now, environment is itself dynamic. It changes in some ways and remains the same in some ways. So evolution was also a dynamic process which was responding to a dynamic environment. Now, isn't the current environment one that would produce the mind and body closest to what we are? No, that's not true, because our environment has changed rapidly over the past couple of thousand years. So we may actually be misfits in our environment. Okay, now, will evolution catch up with the current environment? It might, but we may not want necessarily to wait for evolution to catch up with the current, whatever the environment is. We want to also shape where we end up. We don't want to end up with tyrannies lacking civilization. So, because of evolution, we are directed towards action that would, in a paleo environment, lead to evolutionary success. And the diverse actions which lead to evolutionary success includes varied behavior such as altruism, selfishness, love, affection, hard work, leisure, development of relationships. So we are complex human beings, and we should not think that we are only one kind. We should not think that we are only selfish, or we should not have this idea that everybody is just altruistic. We have to understand that we are both selfish and altruistic, and having an accurate understanding of human nature, then come up with the best, with our best life, how to get our best lives. Okay. So when we go for take an action, there are some inputs and consequences of the action. It can be something simple like going for a walk, or something like getting a college degree. Okay, now I'm going to give you a model. Okay, just based on what I've said till now. So here's the model. And what do you have in this model? Well, here in this model, I first have manas. Okay, manas, by manas I mean the intrinsic hardwiring of our brain that is a product of evolution. So this is what you could call human nature, manas. The next part is prapta. And what is prapta? Prapta is the knowledge, culture, beliefs, moralities that we have acquired from our friends, family, media, life experiences, and education. And these influence our desires. So manas and prapta together are inputs to the decision-making process, and they influence what action we take. And that part of the brain, which is the decision-making process, I call it hisab or hisab, which is a word for calculation. Okay. Now there are other influences also which determine what action we take. For example, there are these resources, and then there are these environments. So, and I've not put all these arrows here to kind of get messy, but what are the resources? Well, the resources which also influence what actions we take are economic resources, health resources, and other resources. So, okay, so I have three economic resources, health resources, relationship resources, which is RR, very important, and other resources. So these are the four things over here on the top row: RR, HR, ER, and OR. Similarly, they are environment. Now, resources is something which are more particular to us, whereas environment is more like social. It's the environment in which we exist. And what are these environments? Well, these environments are the social environment, the relationships environment. Do we have access to friends? I mean, is there an opportunity to make friends? Health environment. Do we have clean air, water, fresh foods? Now you can think of these also as resources. clean air, water, fresh foods, or you can think of them as the environment, and you can think of your health resources as being what kind of health you actually have, which is of course affected by your health environment. Economic environment, what opportunities for work you have, which depending on the economic environment, you are going to get some work, and that will determine the economic resources that you have. And all other environments are OR. So the environments over here are these 5 environments. And so all these also affect actions, and actions in turn affect these resources and the environment to a lesser part, because environment means the entire environment. So your actions do affect the social environment, but to a lesser extent, because you're one of many. So these actions in this, which are also influenced by these resources and environment, together with these resources and environment, give you some positive rewards from your brain, which I call love. Very important word, love. It's going to pop up again and again. And so love is the reward which our brain gives. And let's see. Ilaku is the results of our actions for evolution. So in a changed environment, a brain may actually give us rewards, but it may not result in ilaku because we are in a different environment. Most notable example would be contraception. We have a very strong desire for sex, and we get a very strong love from sex, and we get that because evolution said that this is a action that is very, it gives you a lot of reward for it, because evolution is trying to get you to reproduce. But then modern contraception has cut off this link, so you can actually now have sex without any ilaku, but you'll still get the love. Okay, and then of course our actions will create changes in our resources and environment. So that is the model that's the scientific model. You want to call it rational model, you want to call it logical model, whatever is for human behavior. And here are some observations, okay? So we decide on our actions, our brain decides on our actions, and the goal of the action in the brain telling us that some action is desirable and some is not, is that at the bottom of it is love. So the brain is trying to get you to get love. You can't say that, oh, I decided to take this action not because my brain wanted me to, but let's say because I thought it was moral. Guess what? The desire to be moral is also something which your brain tells you is desirable. Okay, so we are love harvesters. And negative love, which is the opposite of love, or also you can, I call it honey, H-N-I. Honey is negative love, which is like sadness, pain, loneliness, loss, etc. So I You can call it honey or you can call it negative love. I sometimes call it honey, sometimes, but mostly I think I'll call it negative love. So we are love harvesters. Our brain is constantly, whatever actions we are taking, the brain is saying, hey, do this or do that. And at the back of it is, brain will reward you by giving you love. And that's what the Hishab mechanism over here, that's what tells you what action to take. And so we seek pleasures, happiness, satisfaction, overcoming adversity, love, being loved, doing our duty, etc., while we like to avoid sadness, pain, loneliness, loss of resources, sense of failure, etc. So these are the things which give us positive love, and these are the things which give us negative love. Now, someone may say, oh, I desire loneliness. Okay. And then you're the one, you're getting positive love from loneliness. That's what your brain is telling you. It may not work in the long term. You may think that you desire it. If you get it, you may be happy for a while, but you're most likely going to get a lot of negative love down the road. So there is this, there's this issue of the short term and the long term. In an unnatural environment, some actions the brain may intensely desire because it gives short term love and leads to excessive negative love in the long term. And that's the malfunction. And that malfunction happens because we are in an unnatural environment. And what is the most common example of this? It's addictions. People, let's say, are drug addicts, intensely desire drugs, and their brain tells them intensely, get drugs, get drugs, get drugs. Okay. So the Hisab mechanism tells them to get drugs, and then they get it. They get a spike in love, and which kind of makes them want to do it again. But in the long term, it leads to a lot of negative love. So why the malfunction? Why is the brain telling them to do something which is in the longer term is a massively net negative love? It's because we are in an unnatural environment. You put any animal in an unnatural environment, it is going to malfunction, and humans are no different. We malfunction in an unnatural environment to different extent, and the way we can function well in an unnatural environment is to develop an understanding of our nature and then coming up with a plan which can make the best. And then we can actually, if you have a good plan, then we can even do better than what we would have done in our natural environment. But we do need a good plan. Some of it is there in this book. And the rest would be there in the Nature Ternary book. When we come to this, I come to this issue of what is reality, just what is truth? And this is very, a lot of people have given a lot of thought to it, because everybody wants to know what is truth, what is reality. These are all related ideas, related questions. And this view of reality, well, we are love harvesters, and our brain guides us to seek love. When we decide what is true and what is not, we are making a statement about how we and others should act. This is the connection between our brain and reality. As our actions are determined by love, something that will not produce love is ignored by our brains and will not be reality. Do I care whether in some distant galaxy a star is being formed? Will that affect me? Very minor impact, right? Almost a negligible impact. Therefore, should that be a part of my reality? No. So, reality, you can say, some people will say, well, there's reality is the physical world. I mean, yes, a star being formed in a distant galaxy will affect me if I'm working for future humans and I'm making an investment in expanding humans through space, which is, again, what this book is about, which is a very major goal for me. So it does impact me, yes, but negligibly right now. Because that impacts me negligibly, it's not really a part of my reality. It's a negligible part of my reality. So then reality becomes what impacts me, and what impacts me is decided by the brain, and the brain tells me what things impact me and don't impact me by directing me to take certain actions. So then reality becomes something which is produced by the brain, and at the back of the brain, the background is that Hisab mechanism, which is telling us do this and do that, and that which it tells us to do is the one which we believe is going to give us love. It directs us in particular directions, the brain, and that is reality. So I also said mental health. And what is mental health? Well, I've just spoken about behavior. So let me just say that, okay, what is mental health? So mental health is a persistent lack of love. Mental or mental ill health is a persistent lack of love. Why do people get depressed? Why do they suffer mental illness? If they are in an environment where they do not persistently find the opportunity for love, then over time they are going to get demotivated, depressed. Their brain is going to start saying, you know, I've asked you to do this and I asked you to do that, and you didn't produce any love. So this persistent lack of love leads to mental illness. And love, remember, is not only from one, one kind of love cannot be substituted from other kind of love. What are the various like sources of love? We have pleasures, overcoming adversity, loving, being loved, felt like we have done our duty, travel, adventure, painting, singing. All this give you love, right? And one is not really substitutable by another. We just can't say that we are just going to become consumers and we're going to consume more and more and more because that gives me love, and then ignore the rest, the other stuff which gives you love, and that will result in really a lack of love overall because you're not getting a balance. So consider this as like the different sorts of love as different nutrients for your brain. You need a balanced diet, right? You can't just substitute proteins for carbohydrates. Well, I guess you can, like, maybe the liver actually converts proteins to carbohydrates. May not be the best example, but let's say you can't substitute vitamins with carbohydrates. You need a balanced diet, right? So these are some of the important nutrients for a mentally healthy life, and the lack of these nutrients results in mental ill health. Whereas having a balanced diet of these mental nutrients is the best possible life, or you can say the life in which we have happiness.